I'm excited for this season of Rocket Motivation because my firm, Hand, Arundel, Harrison Sale, Attorneys at Law, where I am a partner, is our sponsor. We understand life and running a business can be challenging, but with the right support, it can also be incredibly rewarding. That's why we're thrilled to announce our partnership with Hand, Arundel, Harrison Sale.
Everyone's voice is important. There's nothing special about me, nothing special about the way I sing. It's how I make a living. And I've been through a lot, and a lot of people deal with a lot of things. I understand that, but everybody's story is it's their story. But I said, I always feel when I go through these things that God's trying to use these things to get my attention. He's trying to tell me something, to reach my heart and tell me something. And she said, please, would you listen to him this time?
Hey everyone, this is Cate, and welcome to this week's episode of Rocket Motivation. This week's guest is a Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter. His song, Your Love Amazes Me, hit #1 on the country chart. He's earned multiple gold and platinum records over his 40-plus year career and continues to tour and perform. He's faced and overcome his share of adversity, including brain surgery, vocal cord surgery, and most recently, throat cancer. He's got a great story of inspiration. John Berry, welcome to Rocket Motivation.
It's good to be with you.
All right. Well, John, thanks for taking the time to be with us today. So let's do this, John. Kind of tell us where you are now in your life, your career, what you do, family, just kind of catch us up.
Career-wise, will be our 27th year of doing my annual Christmas tour. That's been a real blessing to get to do. I'm not sure exactly how many albums I've done. I've close to 50 over the years. My last one being Find My Joy, which is an album that Steve Dorff produced. And it was a collection of some classic hymns that I knew from church, songs that have been inspirational in my faith in Christ, and along with 4 new songs of faith. And it came out really nice. That's the most recent recording thing I've done. Family-wise, I'm a father of 3 and grandfather of 2. And my wife, Rob, and I we're packing today to head to Texas to go celebrate one's 3rd birthday. So life is good.
All right, wonderful. All right, so let's do this. Let's go back to 1994. Your song, Your Love Amazes Me, it hits #1. But you were undergoing brain surgery around that same time. So kind of tell us what happened.
It was more than around the same time. It was the same day. So the morning the chart came in, I was in surgery. But to back up a little bit, Christmas of 93, I can remember that it wasn't feeling like me. I could tell didn't really say anything about it. I just felt something was off. As we got into 94, it started showing up more in my kind of quit eating, was nauseated a lot. By spring, by March, I was starting to turn into somebody else, little Jekyll and Hyde. My wife, Robin, who we've been married for, that was in 94. So we've been married going on 7 years, I guess. She's been singing with me, and our daughter, Taylor Marie, was on the road with us, and my mother-in-law, Carol. I sent them all home. They didn't need to be out on the road. Got to where I wasn't coming off the bus except to walk on stage and walk back to the bus. I found out years later that my band guys told me that whenever I was off the bus, they were tearing apart the back room I was living in on the bus because trying to find the drugs they knew I had to be taking, because nobody changes that dramatically over that short period of time. Of course, I didn't find anything. Then I got a call on April 28th. My wife found me in D.C. I had a day off before the 29th. I was playing at a club there. And so on the 28th, the morning of the 28th, she found me, and she said, I just want to let you know. And I hadn't talked to her in a long time. I quit calling and turned into somebody pretty evil. She said, Sean's going to be born today as our 2nd child. And she wanted to let you know. And my response was, well, call, let me know how it goes. Pretty cold.
So what was going on with you?
Well, we didn't know. I was doing a bottle of Advil a day because I had horrible headaches. I wasn't eating. By that time, I'd lost about 60 pounds. I ended up I didn't jump on a plane. I reluctantly got on a plane. My road manager sent me home, and I don't remember going home. I don't remember renting a car. I don't remember driving to Athens. But I got to the hospital where Sean was with Robin, or I got there about an hour after he was born. And I walked in the room and Robin hardly recognized me at first. I looked so different, lost so much weight. And we visited there, and it was Sean needed to go back to the nursery for some things. And so she asked if I wanted to take him back. I said, sure. So I took him back to the nursery, and I was walking back to her room, and I just had to sit down on the floor. I felt so bad. I felt like I was about to pass out. I sat down on the floor, and this nurse walked by, and she said, John, is that you? And it's a lady I've known from Athens for years. I said, yeah, how you doing? She didn't say anything except, like a good nurse, she started asking lots of questions because she knew something was wrong. She could tell. She sat down on the floor next to me and asking questions. Got talking about my parents' medical history. And she asked if my dad was living. I said, yes. She said, any medical issues that he's had that you might know of? I said, well, before I was born, he had a cerebral aneurysm and survived it, which is pretty rare. And she said, wow. Well, she said, what about your mom? I said, well, she had a cerebral aneurysm in 1981 and it took her life. I didn't know a gurney could go that fast to an emergency room. And I did not have a cerebral aneurysm, but I did have a keloid cyst in the third ventricle of my brain. And in infants, it causes I can hardly say the word, hydrocephalus, that's it. But since there's not a skull, the skin expands and around the head. And with me, since the skull had been developed, it caused extreme headaches, loss of appetite, change of personality. So I ended up going to Emory University to the pediatric ward, pediatric neurologist, and I had fiber optic surgery done. And they poked a hole in that little cyst and the fluid went away. And I woke up and I was me again.
How long were you feeling the effects from that cyst? What period of time was it before you had the surgery?
Christmas till May 10th.
Okay, so
the morning of May 10th, Your Love Amazes Me is my first number one record on R&R chart, and that's the morning I had brain surgery.
Okay, man. So
pretty tough way to get a number one record, but the guys have to do what a guy's got to do.
Yeah. Well, and tell us about that. All right. So, I mean, what's that like? Did you know that your song hit number one before you went into surgery, or did you know it after you came out?
No, I kept asking. I kept forgetting, and we didn't realize that the memory was going to be such an issue. But I couldn't remember. I kept asking over and over, and then finally, my wife got a copy of the chart and taped it up on the wall by my bed, so I knew.
Yeah.
But my short-term memory it's not the best. All these years later, but for about 2 years, I don't remember very much at all. So 94, 95, 96, I don't remember very much.
Well, I was going to ask you about your recovery. I mean, so, you got the number one hit. I would assume you'd want to be out promoting it. And I guess, were you able to do that?
Yeah, our first show back was actually on June 10th of 94. 30 days later, June 8th of 94 at the House of Blues in LA, teleprompter in tow. Kind of a weird deal. And, but yeah, I was back out on the road pretty quick, but I didn't do any press. I was doing tour dates. I don't know how many, I don't remember, but I wasn't doing much press, if any press. So it seems it's been sort of a cycle. Every time I had a number one record, there was something going on where I couldn't get out and really work it. Well,
how did it, you told me about, your short-term memory loss, but once this happens to you, you get the surgery, you come out, I guess, how do you deal with going forward? So, you've had this issue, you've got some lingering effects. How do you move forward from it?
Man, it's tough. You have to realize that we can't find our joy in our circumstances. And I'm not preaching to anybody but me, because I keep forgetting that I can't find my joy in my circumstances. I have to keep reminding myself. Our joy has to be found in Christ. Let's rephrase that. My joy has to be found in Christ. I can't find my joy in my circumstances, because my circumstances, it's not been the easiest road to hoe. And I know everybody has different circumstances and things they have to deal with. And I think that's why you started this podcast, is because it puts a focus on, we all have things we have to handle and go through. and experience and how to manage those things. And I have to daily remind myself that it's not mine to deal with, that Jesus died on a cross for me because he loved me. And I have to give it to him. I have to give my day to him. And that's how I go through it.
Well, and then, I mean, after the brain surgery, you go through vocal cord surgery. How did that come about? And I guess, I mean, especially being a singer, that would probably be pretty, concerning that you got problems with your vocal cords, since that's, I know you're a songwriter and a singer, but to be able to sing, you gotta use your vocal cords. So tell us about that.
Well, I don't call myself a songwriter. I've got friends who are songwriters who are remarkable, who write every day, who are disciplined about it. I get lucky and get in a room with really good songwriters and get them really strong coffee and get credit writing a song. Every now and then I'll have an idea to contribute. But the vocal cord surgery, I had a polyp on my vocal cords. I want to say it was fall of 97. That sounds right. Had to have vocal cord surgery to remove that polyp. And I had to cancel my entire Christmas tour that year for Christmas of 97. I still have promoters that won't hire me because I canceled that tour. Can you believe that?
Man. Did you have any, so when you had that surgery, was there any fear that you had that you might not be able to sing again or sing as well as you did, going into the surgery?
Well, you don't know how it's going to come out, and they can't tell you. So they don't really know if your voice is going to come back the way it was, if it's going to change. Mine changed. There's some texture that's gone away that I liked. That's not there anymore. But most of the strength came back. And it started getting better. It took a long time. I mean, I had sang in clubs 5 nights a week for 10 years, man. I had Joe Cocker voice going on there, man. Well earned.
Yeah. Well,
had some nice texture. Well, it was tough because I had to take almost a year off. I was from the 1st of November until fall of that next year, like 10 months I had to take off. Man, and today in the radio world, you're gone.
Well, and how'd you deal with that mentally, knowing you got to take off, to get your voice back right? I mean, how'd you deal with that mentally?
Probably not the best. Of course, I spent a lot of time with my kids. We lived north of Athens, Georgia, in a little community out in the country called Pocataligo. And we lived there I moved there in 85. I bought 5 acres in 1985. And Robin and I got married in 88. And by the time we left there, we had about 152 acres. And we didn't want a lot of land. We just wanted all the land that touched ours. Yeah. And it was a beautiful little farm. And mainly the only thing we raised was horses and kids. And we just a wonderful life out there. It's a beautiful place, and I worked hard. I spent a lot of time that year riding horses every day with my kids, and especially my boys. They were really little. I can't remember exactly how old they were. Let me see. They've probably been like 3 and 4. The boys. Taylor Marie was being homeschooled, so she'd have school every morning, and I get the boys out every day, and we go up to the barn and saddle up the horses And every day, if weather was okay, we were gone for several hours out riding horses, walking horses, and just being cowboys. And that was good. It was a lot of fun.
How did you know that you were ready to get back at it, singing wise?
Oh, I don't know. I just eventually got back to it. I'd practice. I'd start warming up at home, just start see how it felt. And it took a long time. Because it just felt like the vocal cords were tight. Everything felt tight in my throat, and it took a long time to get back to where I felt like it sounded like me. So there are other people I know who've had the same type of surgery who have not fared as well, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I just had to trust that my creator had another plan for me. So whatever that plan is, I have to live my life in a way that honors him. And if I do that and walking in his light, whatever the path is I'm on is the path I'm supposed to be on,
Let's jump to 2019. I think that's when you get diagnosed with cancer of your throat. First, I mean, how did you discover that? Kind of tell us about, what happened, the treatment you went through. Kind of just, tell us all about that.
It was October of 2018. I noticed I was drinking a lot of water because I had a tickle in my throat. And I wasn't quite sure what it was. And I actually recorded a CD in November of 2018 called Thomas Road, a little 6-song EP. It's got one of my favorite songs on it called The Richest Man. A nice record. And the whole time I had this horrible tickle, and I kept drinking tons of water. I told Robin, I said, I feel like I got a skin of a Spanish peanut stuck in my throat. It's exactly what it felt like, if you've ever had that, and would not go away. So finally, I went to see my doctor, and they said, "Oh, you got a pretty bad tonsil infection." So this was like, I'd already cut the CD, and we're getting ready for Christmas tour rehearsal right before Thanksgiving. So they put me on a round of antibiotics, and we did rehearsal week and started the tour, got into it a couple of weeks, and the tour runs about 5 weeks. And about midway through, I called the doctor. I said, "It's no better. Can I get some more antibiotics?" They put me on something different. Got home from the tour. It was no better. It was no worse. It was no better. And I went in the bathroom, and I got a flashlight, and I looked down my throat, and I went, "Oh, my God, my tonsil. It looks horrible." I called my wife and said, "Robin, come in here and look at this." For all you wives, your husband's in the bathroom, and he says, "Hey, honey, come look at this. You know it's not good." So she gets the flashlight. She looks down my throat. She said, "Oh, my God, that looks like a tumor." So we called and got an appointment with a specialist, a man named Dr. Spire. And I always say God's got a great sense of humor. I walked into Dr. Spire's office on January 4th in 2019. And he said, "John, good to see you again." I said, when did I see you the first time? He said, "You wouldn't remember. But back in 1994, when Dr. Ossoff removed that polyp off your vocal cord, I was an intern on your surgery."
Wow.
So instantly there was this little peace that came over, At least this guy understands. I mean, everyone's voice is important, but at least he understands I make a living with mine.
Right.
And there's nothing special about me, nothing special about the way I sing. It's how I make a living. And we talked for a few minutes. I was holding the whole Spanish peanut skin thing, and he said, "Well, let's take a look." And he turned that flashlight on, click, about that long. He turned it off. He said, "We are straight shooters here. We tell it the way it is, no BS. That's throat cancer." What? I was turning my head, and I looked at my wife, and I just couldn't even speak. I'm like, go figure. And I think I was more mad than anything.
And why is that?
Just felt like I dealt with a lot.
Yeah. And so, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you had the brain surgery, the polyp surgery. Now you got throat cancer.
You can go back before all that. January of 81, my mom dies at my house, 20 years old. It was me and my dad living there for months, and me being with my dad when he lost his wife of 36 years. And then later that year, in November of 81, a lady ran a stop sign and hit me on a motorcycle, broke both my legs and my left hip. It's just, what's next?
Yeah.
What's going to top this one?
Yeah. I mean, did you ever get have the why me moment? I mean, like, good Lord, look, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens.
Which time of day?
Yeah.
How many times does that minute hand hit? But I told Robin that night, we were talking about the events of the day when I've been diagnosed. And I told her, I said, I've been through a lot. I said, I know a lot of people went through a lot. A lot of people deal with a lot of things. I understand that. But everybody's story is it's their story. It's their coping mechanism and their. But I said, I always feel when I go through these things that God's trying to use these things to get my attention. He's trying to tell me something, to reach my heart and tell me something. She said, please, would you listen to him this time? Please listen to him.
Yeah.
And I did. I really did try to do that and realize, we actually moved up to Nashville a number of years ago under really kind of odd circumstances. And I realized during that time that God did not move us to Nashville for the music business. he moved us here to be a part of a church and a church community and to know him more. And so that's one of the great things that came out of me being home and going through recovery and having time to spend on things that really matter.
Yeah.
I had both my tonsils removed, and what Robin thought was a tumor, in fact. But I had tonsillectomy, of course, and then radiation started after that. They wanted to kill anything that might be there. And so I had radiation 5 days a week for 7 weeks. And that's tough. But the chemotherapy is tougher. Yeah. I had chemotherapy once a week for 8 weeks, eight sessions of that. And so I'd have chemo every Thursday, radiation Monday through Friday. And at first it wasn't so bad. I mean, after a couple of weeks, I could tell the radiation was starting to drain my energy. The chemotherapy I'd heard horror stories about. And I was like, it's no big deal. I'm fine. Till about week 5. After week 4, I could really feel it. But at week 5, it kicked into high gear. We were sitting in the car at the drive-through at the pharmacy picking up some medication. My body started to react violently to the chemotherapy because my body wanted to get the poison out. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced in my life.
How did you make it through all that, all the chemo, the radiation, and then at the same time, you got I'm sure you're thinking about your career, you're thinking about making sure you live. How are you getting through it?
Well, the chemotherapy was so bad, I didn't care about getting through it. I am a gun guy. I had my wife put all my stuff away because it was getting to the point that I wasn't going to live through it. I was going to take care of that. It was bad. I'm telling you, the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. And the problem, part of the problem is I wasn't living my faith. Because like I had mentioned to you before, my happiness, my joy cannot be found in my circumstances. And we all tend to do that. And once again, I'm not preaching to anybody but me, because every day I have to remind myself, you can't find your joy. You can't find your joy in the fact that whatever it was in your life, that's not where your joy comes from. Your joy comes from your relationship with Christ, and that's what I have to focus on. And I find that it's completely true. So, but it was tough getting through that, and I just had to depend on Christ for strength and that Bible verse, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. There's a song that became a favorite of mine and Robin's. It's an old classic hymn called "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," and there will be times when I'd be in the bathroom on Fridays, hugging that toilet like it was my best friend, and especially middle of the night when it would hit on Friday nights. And Robin was sitting there with me on the floor, and she would just hold my hand, and she would remind me of all the times that God had been faithful to our family, to me and my family before I knew her, things that she had heard about, and how God had been faithful to her and her family through difficulties and within their family history. And she would sing that old classic hymn, "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," and it became a real source of strength for me.
Right. Hey, John, all the stuff that you've been through, how has that affected your songwriting or the songs you choose to perform? I mean, do you take all the stuff you've been through and channel it into your career?
Well, I think I always have, but even more so now. There are songs that I've done in the past that I won't do anymore. I don't think they're appropriate. They're not appropriate for a man of my stature or my faith or my belief system, whatever that might be. And I don't know exactly how to explain that, but that I don't think they're appropriate for me to sing. Not that there's anything crazy wrong with them, but I don't think they're appropriate for me to sing.
I got you.
So I'm cautious about that. I'm very cautious, and maybe now I'm not the fun guy now. So.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about like that. Hey, John, I mean, you've had a very successful career. God, I mean, in dealing with all the adversities that you've gone through in your life, what have you learned about yourself?
I've learned that I could be more positive. I'm not always that positive a person. I think it would help me a lot if I was, because I see people who have been through things far beyond what I've been through. where my life pales in comparison to some of the adversities that they've had to face. And they live their lives with absolute joy. And that's what I want. I want to be that person.
I mean, has it changed your perspective on how you look at life?
Well, yeah, I think it has. We're very fragile creatures. Unlike my 30-year-old self, I'm very mortal. And I think one of the greatest things I've learned is that I'm not here for me. My life is not here to glorify me. My life is here as a creation of God for His glory. And I need to live my life with that in mind, not for my glory.
Hey, John, this has been a great conversation for me. I've loved listening to your story and the way you've told it. But let me ask this, Rocket Motivation Podcast, what we do, it's all about, trying to help people out that are going through tough times. Based on what you've been through, what advice would you give the listeners who are going through a tough time right now, or just, going through some adversity? Based on what you've been through, what advice would you give them?
I don't know where, certainly don't know where or who, but hopefully that there's a spiritual component to their healing. I know there's a spiritual component to their healing. They may not know it, but I know it. And I think that they need to be open to the spiritual part of their healing. And in being open to that spiritual part of their healing, that they're able to surround themselves with people that have like-minded, Christ-centered, biblical foundation lives who can help guide them in that. There's lots of spiritual people out there, maybe not be the right kind of spiritual you need. But I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And I think being open to those lessons and using, because I believe that God uses, I don't believe God causes things to happen to us specifically. I don't think God gave me throat cancer. I don't believe that God directed that car to hit me. I think life happens. But I believe that God uses those circumstances to get our attention because He loves us and He wants our attention. He wants us to love Him back. And whatever circumstances folks are going through, you're not walking it by yourself. If you're walking with Him, you're not walking by yourself. He knows, and He wants to use it for your good and for His glory. And I don't know if it comes any more than that, any more real than that.
Well, if the listeners want to keep up with you, find out where you might be performing next, or want to follow you, what's the best way they can do it?
Well, website-wise is johnberry.com, and my social media is at John Berry Music, and it's Berry, like blueberry, strawberry. But all my socials are John Berry Music, and my website is johnberry.com.
Okay. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate it. This has been a great story, a great podcast. This episode's going to be one of the best. So I really want to thank you for coming on. But with all of my guests, I always give my guests the parting shot. So if you can, dig deep, something we hadn't already talked about. Give us some great advice to take us home.
When I was a kid, about 9 years old, I came home from school one day, and my mom was on the side porch of our house reading a little magazine or something. And I went out there to see her, and I had a lot on my heart and a lot on my mind, and I didn't know quite what to say. And my mom, she set her magazine down. She said, "Johnny, what in the world's wrong with you?" And all I could say was, "Nothing, Mama." She said, "Come here, Johnny." I sat on the swing next to her, a little fella, and Mama put her arm around my neck, around my shoulder. She pulled me up close to her. She said, "You tell your mama what's wrong. I know something's bothering you." I said, "Mama, I've been thinking about stuff they've been teaching me in Sunday school about Jesus and Him dying on a cross and blood, and they buried Him and He came back alive and went to heaven, and He's coming back one day, and there's a ghost involved, and it scares me to death." She laughed. She said, "Honey, it's the sweetest story ever told." And she explained to me, she read some Bible verses to me, explained to me how God loves us and how Jesus came for us. And she read one verse in particular, John 3:16, which most of us have heard, and a lot of us who grow in church, they know that verse. But she read it to me different. She said, "Look right here. It says, 'For God so loves Johnny that He gave His only Son, that if Johnny would trust in Him, Johnny will have everlasting life. So my parting words, if your listeners would read John 3:16 and put their name in that verse, I'd appreciate that.
All right, John. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you, friend.
Man, what a great episode with John Berry. He's had such a successful career. And, we really didn't even talk about how successful this guy is. But the hardships he's overcome, and he just keeps going and never stops. And, of course, his faith is so strong. Just a great episode. And I tell you, if you want to listen to some of John Berry's music, just get on Spotify and you can listen to all of them. But anyway, so this wraps up season 6 of Rocket Motivation. And it's hard to believe we've done 72 episodes. But without my sponsors, this would have never happened. So I want to thank all my sponsors throughout all the season. And of course, this season, my law firm, Arundel Harrison Sell, I want to thank them so much for making this happen. And most importantly, I want to thank you, the listeners, because if you're not listening, then we're not going to be doing this show. So it's been great so far, and we got more to come. Thanks again for listening to Rocket Motivation. I want to again thank our sponsor, my law firm, Arundel Harrison Sell, with offices in Mobile, Birmingham, Fairhope, and Athens, Alabama, and Destin, Panama City Beach, and Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. We are uniquely situated among the Southeast major law firms to provide legal direction to clients throughout Alabama and Northwest Florida. So whether you're looking for legal advice, litigators, or simply a partner you can trust, Arundel Harrison Sell is there for you. Thank you for listening, and be sure to check out Arundel Harrison Sell for all your legal needs. Visit our website at handfirm.com. And if you would like to get my book, Get Back Up, it's available at Amazon. Just put in Get Back Up and my name, Rod Cate, and the book will pop up. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to Rocket Motivation wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please rate and review the shows and spread the word about Rocket Motivation to your friends. So until next time, remember, never give up and always get back up.